Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. The All Progressives Congress, APC, the ruling party, at the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal last week, made allegations that former Vice President and candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Atiku Abubakar, is a Cameroonian and therefore was not eligible to contest in the presidential election, so his petition contesting President Buhari's victory should be dismissed. Meanwhile, the former vice president has responded to the allegation. He says it is shameful, disrespectful, and idiotic to say that he's a Cameroonian when he even once occupied office as vice president of Nigeria. The question remains, what is the legal implication of the APC's charge? What exactly is the game? Joining us now to speak on this is Liborous Oshoma, who is a legal practitioner. Liborous, good to see you again. The last time I saw you, that was before I went...
Yes, welcome back from baptism.
Now, I mean, you listened to my introduction. We're just being told that a man who had been the deputy director of customs, who won election as governor in Adamawa State, who served as vice president for 8 years, and who has been running for president for some time, is a Cameroonian.
For me, it's what lawyers do. Normally, first step, once a petition or a claim is served on you as a lawyer, the first thing you look out for is, how do I rattle, the claimant or the petitioner, You want to find a way to knock off that petition or the claim using what we call preliminary objections. You raise non-issues first, and that might become issues if your argument is solid enough. And so I think this is one of such. And unfortunately, it has generated so much controversy because, like Nigeria, these days, because we are so divided now, issues such as this, create, make news on like what we should be focusing on. And I think also that that's what the ruling party wants to achieve with it. If you remember the same way the Buhari certificates, made so much, news in 2015 and even in 2018, I also think that's why this is in the news. If you remember, also if you look at the Constitution, you really don't need to have a certificate to contest for the office of the president in Nigeria,
because section
131, yes,
and interpretation section
yes, exactly,
318.
Yes, it says, in the opinion of INEC, if you can read and write, and so first and foremost, making Buhari's certificate an issue in the election petition. I think also the APC also would, look out for, something that would throw their opponent off guard. And so they decided to, give a narrow interpretation to Section 25 of the Constitution to say, look, you are not qualified. You are Cameroonian because the Constitution says you must be a citizen by birth. Yeah. And by virtue of this narrow interpretation of citizen by birth, it means those people who were Nigerians, who were born in Nigeria before independence, 1960, October 1st, 1960. And so if your state or your community, became a Nigerian by plebiscite, by an agreement subsequently, and that by virtue of that Section 25, you are not eligible to contest, which for me, it's a very narrow interpretation. And I know the courts, because if you look at, myriad of authorities, the courts will not give an interpretation to an act that will create further problem. I say that because I know that the court will not look at the Constitution and intentionally, deny people who subsequently became Nigeria by a referendum or a plebiscite, the opportunity derivable from the Constitution.
Well, will you go as far as to say that, well, maybe we should take a second look at Section 25 or the whole of Chapter 3 of the 1999 Constitution? Yeah, because there are issues about citizenship rights,
yes,
along gender lines, and now we have seen that that Constitution does not take care of the interest of persons who became Nigerians by referendum.
If you look at our Constitution, there are so many issues we need to take a look at. a lot of people have clamored for the amendment, re-amendment, subsequent amendment. In the 1963 Constitution, that provision was covered. It was taken care of. But I also do not think that the drafters of this Constitution would intend that, someday somebody will be raising issues as, narrow as that. And then subsequently also, it is impossible for the Constitution to take care of everything. And so what usually happens is for the court
to read the
intention of the lawmakers on the spirit of the law into it. And that's what India did with Chapter 2, the fundamental objective and directive principles of state policy, with their law, which is also similar to ours. A lot of us have been clamoring to make Chapter 2 justiciable, that we can sue on them. And it's the same thing, but in India, what the Supreme Court did was to give interpretation to that section to make those rights justiciable. And so we have seen subsequently, you remember also, before now, Section 188 of the Constitution also, subsection 10 says, once a governor is impeached, you cannot query, the court has no power to entertain, such an impeachment. But the court, in entertaining that, in interpreting that section, did say also that, look, you cannot invoke subsection 10 without complying with subsection 1 to 9. That's not the intent of the drafters. And so that became the position of the law. So I also think that this one, it is good that issues like this are raised sometimes. So it will give the court the opportunity to chew on them and then give us, a clear interpretation, and which I also think, without, prejudicing the mind of the court or preempting, which I also think the court will not give a narrow interpretation to.
Is this any different? Or are there similarities between this case and that of House of Assembly Majority Leader Shugaba Dama of 1980, who was deported on the orders of the then Minister of Internal Affairs, Maitama, in 1980 to Chad?
No, the difference here is that for Shugaba's case, Shugaba was all about political maneuvering.
So it was a kangaroo process.
Exactly, it was a process. They just needed to oust Shugaba. And so you deport him, just claim that he's not a Nigerian, and so since you are not a Nigerian, you don't have a right to be resident here. Deport him while the elections are, coming up, and then, destabilize him. And his party, the GMPP, a great Nigerian People's Party led by Alhaji Ibrahim Waziri then, went to court on his behalf, and the matter went as far as Supreme Court. That even made Shugaba very popular. Indeed. Unlike this case, what the APC legal team is saying, that by virtue of Section 25 of the Constitution and Section 130 of the Constitution, that the candidate of the PDP is not eligible to contest, not being a citizen by birth. And so
it lacks the local standing.
Yes, to even assist you. If you are not competent, and so you don't have the local standing to even contest elections, and then you shouldn't even be seen at the tribunal. And so any vote that, accrued to you should be voided. Yeah. These are legal arguments, unlike Shugaba's case, that who was deported even before the election. So maybe if they had come up with this position before now, which would have been very difficult, because at that, what you'll be saying is that Adamawa is not part of Nigeria. And so that will be, a very extreme case. But so they took out the constitutional interpretation. And also quickly, some people had likened this to Obama's case, that yes, after all, in America you have similar provision. No. Obama's case, in America, the provision is almost similar to that of our laws, but ours is even expanded. If you are born of Nigerian parents, whether born on our soil here or born on the soil outside, provided you are born of Nigerian parents, you are eligible. But unlike in America, where you must be born on the soil, on American soil. That was Barack Obama's case, that he was not born on American soil, until he came up with his birth certificate. And so, stretching that interpretation.
Prove that he was born in Hawaii.
Yeah, exactly. and so, stretching that interpretation, are you now going to say, deprive people who became Nigerian by virtue of a plebiscite, the opportunity to aspire to the #1 office, when your laws also allow people who are just Nigerian by virtue of the fact that their both parents are Nigerian, but had never stepped their foot on Nigeria. You know, so that's why I say, you know, if it's a very narrow interpretation, those are saying no because...
in any case, our constitution even recognizes dual nationality.
Yeah.
And the local governments in Adamawa State, including Jada, are listed in the constitution.
That's what I'm saying, that, you know, it's what lawyers do really. And for me, it's unfortunate that we are focusing on whether Atiku is a Cameroonian or a Nigerian. There is a non-issue, really. The lawyers, his team, legal team, and then also, you remember, INEC also talked about, INEC defense team also raised a preliminary objection that its lawyer is not licensed to practice law.
They say it's not on the Supreme Court role.
So these are issues that will be dealt with by the court. So we should face the main issues that are, you know, that are problems in our country now. Take, for example, recently you saw the police do photo ops in the Abuja-Kaduna highway, you know, because of these security challenges. And you begin to ask yourself, you want to go and catch a criminal, do you need to go do photo ops in the bush announcing to them that you're coming? You know, definitely they will leave such places
until not to show the people
that you're walking,
that the highway is safe
and then they tell
you to now
you,
travel.
Oh, with all those guns. And then they tell you that, oh, the place is safe, and they leave. Then the bandits comes back. Or is it the court clashes in Rivers State and, you know, in some part of Delta State also. You know, so these are challenges that, you know, we should call out our government on, because the fundamental objectives, the essence of government is the welfare, security and welfare of the people. And,
Section 14.
And so if I can't drive from here to Benin, you know, with a safe mind, without, you know, fear that I might be kidnapped. Because now, kidnapping is no longer discussed. A situation where somebody is kidnapped, the police commissioner is telling you, don't worry, they will demand for ransom and just play. You know, so these are the issues we should be discussing, not...
You have brought up the issue of security. What do you think of this menace of trigger-happy policemen? The other day in Lagos, it was a young man called Kolade Johnson who was killed. And then only yesterday, we woke up to reports that a lady, Ada Ifeanyi, and her boyfriend, Emmanuel, you know, were also attacked by policemen. The lady died. They were stopped by policemen. They were returning from a club in Uludia Papa. Okay, they didn't stop. Maybe those policemen were not even wearing uniform, as we have seen in many cases.
Yes.
Then they followed them to their destination and just opened fire on them. Now, what do you think we can do, you know, to stop this menace of a police brutality? We've talked about changing the architecture, whatever. You know, is it that the police establishment in Nigeria is populated largely by psychiatric cases?
Yes. Yeah, because when you have a heap of garbage, it attracts flies. Unfortunately, I will say this, that our police in Nigeria is a heap of garbage. And so it can only attract flies, you know, all sorts. Psychiatric cases, like you have rightly mentioned. A situation where the average police station gets 15,000 naira monthly as running costs. And that 15,000 naira monthly does not even come. No police station can boast of receiving that amount twice a year. And then you get 1,000 naira to fare patrol vehicles. And so, what's the kind of people you are going to attract to such force, or a situation where there are no trainings? You employ a man as a policeman, you give him a gun, he had never been to a range, a shooting range. So you get this kind of outcome, this kind of results. And so the first thing he does is you've given him a gun. In some cases, some of them are even armed robbers who are not, you know, reorientated, because they were probably not caught. They found themselves into the police because it's not attractive to you and I. And so when you have such people in the police force, you're going to have this same result that you're having now. Because this is a force that ordinarily is supposed to be, you know, investigating and responsible to those that have and the have-nots. And you have, you know, people who are intimidated. You have, in some cases, people who have psychiatric cases. In some other cases, you know, armed robbers in that force, and you expect them not to compromise. we will just be deceiving ourselves. And so that's why you have the kind of police that you have. And if it continues like that, you have some of them who just grow through the ranks and get to, the highest position. You think, oh, yes, he will do something. He will just, do the little that he can. And some very senior officers see that as an opportunity to fleece the system, where you find situations where police would, you collect allowances meant for rank and file, you do deposit it, collect upfront interest on it. And so the country needs to look at a way of overhauling the entire structure, called the Nigerian police, and then find a way of also decentralizing the police and make it attractive to good hands. You don't, you look at the state of our police colleges, and you ask yourself, what kind of training will you give a man in such an environment? Or what kind of people, human beings, would you breed in such kind of environment? It's the happy, trigger-happy ones. And that's why, when it happens, before now you hear of accidental discharge, a stray bullet. Bullets don't stray.
You have to pull the trigger.
Exactly, you have to pull the trigger. The guns, a gun that whose safety catch is on does not discharge accidentally. For a gun to discharge accidentally, the man who is holding the gun was not trained on how to hold a gun. And so, when you, and that's why it was very easy, because the police also keep, running away from this problem. Recently, some mobile police in Rivers State complained about the state of the police barracks. And it was quick for the police spokesperson to come up with excuses. Oh, the police is trying. I had expected that he would use that as an opportunity, to highlight all the many problems that they are facing. Also, about last month, the acting IG raised alarm that only 20% of the police budget had been released for 2018. And that 20% is not even enough for this recurrent expenditure. I've had cause to donate generators to police stations. I've had cause also to contribute to
even PACN offices use
exactly.
generator.
I've had cause to contribute
the irony here.
to, equipping offices of senior police officers. So if at that level, police officers can't even equip their offices. So what you're going to have is it sees the force as an opportunity to make money. And so once it happens, they create excuses for them.
Why we thank you for donating to the police. The police is your friend.
Yeah,
and there's police community relations committees. So you were doing your duty as a citizen.
Yes, I was, but it shouldn't be. You see, Lagos is succeeding in Lagos a bit because of the police trust fund that was created by Lagos State government. The Security Trust Fund. And so which the federal government also had replicated now. But it's not all about Security Trust Fund, because you create a Security Trust Fund, you buy vehicles for them and walkie-talkie. How about the men that are going to man those vehicles?
Well, 15,000 naira running costs. Little wonder bail is not free. But,
exactly.
But let's look at Zamfara, because you talked about reforming the police, and the issue of Zamfara State has thrown that up on the front burner. I mean, the Senate, the National Assembly was, crying about that last week. In fact, we had Senator Adeyeye, who said, the Constitution is the problem of Nigeria, and practically shredded whatever the Constitution was standing for. Says it will not bring us peace, it will not bring us harmony. But the issue of Zamfara, I mean, the state governor has been in the eye of the storm for a long time. But last year, sometime in June or July, he did say he was abdicating his role as security officer of the state. Was that not enough cry for the federal government to take decisive action in Zamfara?
You see, we're very sentimental with everything that has to do with government and restructuring. The moment you talk about restructuring, you raise fear in some quarters, because restructuring is reduced and narrowed down to oil and sharing of money. They forget insecurity, that you also restructuring with, percolate down to security also. Where you say the governor is the chief security officer, he cannot even create, a civil defense force. And So to that extent, that name is just a tag that he's wearing. So he will need to take instruction from the IG or the president to deploy policemen to a state where there is insecurity, or take instruction to deploy soldiers. And so, if you also, and then because of this brand of politics that we practice, where you have an irresponsible governor also who lives more in Abuja than in his state capital, you know, he comes on TV, makes so much noise about insecurity, but he cannot even, you know, create innovative ideas to tackle such security problems. You know, so that's why we need to look at the structure, the security structure, and find a way. How do we restructure? How do we ensure that security becomes, you know, an all-commerce thing, where all stakeholders, you and I, would be able to make impact and contribute to? But here, it's only the police, and even as private security personnel, you know, including the civil defense, how well, you know, it's for me, just like, you know, create an institution, leave it there, and then use it, create opportunity to fleece, you know, the system further. That's not security. Take, for example, the Nigerians that went to steal in Dubai. It didn't take them up to 6 minutes before they were rounded up. How we invested in CCTV in this country, but nobody's asking those questions. What happened to those CCTV cameras? Or who was the contract awarded to? People talk about security here. We still think it's all about, you know, you're traveling to the airport, the police or army officers there will stop you. Can we see your boot? If something is hidden under your car, how are they going to see it? These days, security has moved beyond that. So we're not even investing, we're not first and foremost investing in the manpower, not to talk of even the equipment for securing, you know, the community. We are still grappling with lights. You know, so these are some of the many challenges. And then because we are also very quick to excuse away some of these challenges, a situation like Michael Hamba said, a situation where bandits comes into a community at 3 a.m., kill children and women, and then you say it's farmers' headers clash, and you just excuse it away. And your president comes to say, oh, you should learn to live with your community, your neighbors, and let's create grazing reserve or grazing route in this day and age. It's excusing away the insecurity, you know. So until we look at the problem frontally and find a way to counter it, we'll just be discussing this insecurity, window dress it, do photo ops in Abuja-Kaduna highway, and then until another one happens, or you have trigger-happy policemen, until another one happens. And God forbid that, you know, it happens to anybody you know. Once life is gone, it's gone.
Well, I'm glad that Adesua brought up Zamfara. There is a resource management dimension to the Zamfara issue. Many Nigerians probably didn't know that there is gold in Zamfara.
Yes.
And that also in Kano, people are mining gold. Until the federal government said it was withdrawing mining licenses in those places. So one conversation that has come up is other Nigerians saying, well, if we have gold in Kano, we have gold in Zamfara. What percentage of all of these, you know, whether you call it illegal mining or whatever, is coming into the federal pocket, instead of talking all the time about oil in the Niger Delta.
You see?
And of course, in other parts of Nigeria, you know, you have iron ore, you have bauxite, you have tin in Jos, in the Plateau Valley.
Even in Nasarawa, people are mining lead illegally as I speak to you now. Yes. And so, that's why I said, when you discuss restructuring, it is reduced to the oil and Niger Delta. Oh, some people want to deprive us of sharing, you know, revenue. And then if we talk about restructuring, it's okay, look, let's each local government or local environment take control of every resources in their domain, and then you can tax them. You can say 50% tax, 40%, 30%, as it was in the First Republic. But no, some people in government would rather want to sit down, give licenses, because there is no data for even determining who owns what license. So everybody comes with a piece of paper, has been licensed to come and mine. And so there are also the indigenes of those areas who feel they should be entitled to something. And so that also leads to, you know, lands and communal clashes. And then another thing that is also very very germane that a lot of us are not even averting our mind to now is this question of, you know, citizenship, indigenship, and settlership. You know, let me paint a scenario. You live in Lagos, you are from Ogu.
No, use the example of Anambra.
Okay, okay. You live in Lagos, you are from Anambra, and you can't, the day you want to vie for, you know, public office in Anambra, they say you are a Lagosian. You are not known at home. You don't visit home. And yet you can't vie for a public office in Lagos because, and in some cases, you know, sometimes you are not even allowed to vote freely. Or in some cases, you are deported, you know, as a miscreant, constituting nuisance. Oh, go back to your state. And so you also have that also replicating in some of these communities like Zamfara. And so there is that struggle. You have it in Jos also. You know, even though that of Jos is not so much in the news now. And so that's one of that big problem that if you restructure the entity called Nigeria, it will take care of. And so this idea of who is an indigene, who is a settler, will no longer be there. But because we always shy away from this problem, we look at the financial gain. And so we look at, and one big issue is the fact that I wish oil was not discovered in commercial quantity in Nigeria as at the time it was discovered.
In 1956, we
probably Oloibiri in Delta State, we probably would have sat up now, you know. Because also, look at the institutions that were created with funds from cocoa. Which other institution, even now that we have so much money, can we create? You know, do you believe that Nigeria, the government of Western region had television, you know, before France in 1957, you know, but all of these, because the moment we discover oil, and Gowon said our problem is not, you know, money, but how to spend it, you know, government became so attractive to everybody that, you know, a cousin of mine who was a vulcanizer, you know, suddenly became a councillor, built houses and bought trucks, and he became honorable. You know, so everybody would want to kill together. Look at the election in Rivers State, and that the army had to be involved. The people that condemned the involvement of the military in election, the moment they were in government, it became suddenly attractive. You know, so that's why you will have these security challenges. That's why you have issues like, oh, Atiku is not a Nigerian, he's a Cameroonian, but also forgetting that we're sitting on a keg of gunpowder. This indigenship, settlership had been and then the issue of referendum had always been a recurrent decimal. So the moment you trigger this fact that some people are not entitled to contest for the highest office in the land, what you're telling them is that you are not, there are some people who are more Nigerians than you. And so that, what if at the end of the day, the Supreme Court rules that he's not qualified? Are you not indirectly telling those people that to your tent, to Israel, you can find your way out of Nigeria? Is that not a... So sometimes when we play politics, we should play it with, you know, a human spirit. Because the position we are now, it's very fragile. We can't afford to create those opportunities. What if this had been happening? What if Atiku were from some states in the southeast that have been agitating? And then you now come and so because you didn't become a Nigerian at birth, you became a Nigerian by true referendum. And so to that extent, you know, from Bakassi. And so to that extent, you cannot vie for the number one office. 4 local
governments in Cross River State were affected by that 1961 plebiscite.
You know, so all of the peace we enjoy now is a very fragile one. And so in an attempt to grab power or to hold on to power, we should be very careful the issues we raise. Yes, I agree, it's a lawyer's thing. Lawyers will do their thing, make their money, you know. But we should be very careful the issues we raise so as not to create further problem.
Fuel subsidy. I mean, the Minister of Finance was in the papers this morning. She attended the spring meeting of the World Bank in Washington, D.C. She said, yes, the IMF and the World Bank may have recommended that Nigeria should remove fuel subsidy because it's not sustainable, but that Nigeria cannot do it at this time because it's not been able to create the necessary social safety nets to cushion the effect. What's your take? Do you think we should remove fuel subsidy so that all of us can just buy fuel at exorbitant rates? You
see, a friend of mine, Bola Oba, when, you know, fuel price was hijacked, you know, in the last, by this administration, I think, was it 2015 or 2016 or so, He said, the price, this is good. The price, to drive the price down, will create competition. I told him, I said, not here. Because at the end of the day, you're talking about this pricing. This is a product that you're not producing locally. So you are still going to be, the price is going to be determined by, market fluctuation international, and also by your local currency. And so there's no way, with the way your local currency is going as if it's drilling oil, there's no way you're going to, the price is going to come down. And at that time also, the government had said subsidy had been removed. And so they gave us a template. And then one of the questions that some of us asked, if, subsidy had been removed, how come it is the same price that you're selling in Lagos, is the same price that you're selling in Abuja? What of the bridging costs? The government will take care of bridging costs. So that means you are subsidizing fuel for some persons in some part of the country. And so that's not fair. And then also, that means government is not sincere. And then, rather than call it subsidy, they came up with a name, I've forgotten the name now, under recovery. And so now, you say you are not paying subsidy, you're only under recovered. And yet you're saying you want to remove subsidy. So it's confusing. So that means you've been paying subsidy. And so now you want to remove that same subsidy. And that's, if you had removed subsidy before now, and you are under recovery. So what are you going to remove again? So these are the questions that is bothering the ordinary man on the street. And so they are confused. And the minister is saying, well, we have to create safety nets. So what are those safety nets? If you remember, during your time in office, you people bought buses. Yes. You people,
I like that.
You bought buses, that these buses will be used. And I laughed then. I was like, are we for real? We need to
transportation.
Yes, we need to develop our transportation infrastructure so that I can afford to drop my car at home in Bagada and say, if I take a bus or if I take a train, I'll get to...
But it wasn't only buses. We had Shopee, which had a lot of other projects in various sectors.
Just the same way they have, what do they even call it now? Market, Empower, the trader money. And all of these are not ways you don't throw money at problems. Let's begin to find ways of creating infrastructure. And it's a long way thing. If I had expected that, with the government that is preaching change, that when they came on board, we'll start, a revolution, infrastructural revolution. Oh, yes, when they started with this Lagos-Calabar Railway, that's the kind of job that will be created on that Aziz and all what's not. I laughed. I said, look, this is more of propaganda. Let's see job begin.
But the Abuja-Kaduna rail line is working.
The Abuja-Kaduna rail line is working. Yes, I agree. It started by your administration and then completed by this one. But the noise that have been made on that rail line is much more than the effectiveness of the railway line. So all of this, for me, let's provide more of a transport infrastructure, and then also workers' welfare. Once you do that, you really don't need to, and then you provide infrastructure. How come all of a sudden the federal government is waiting for Dangote? You want to break monopoly from, the NNPC, but you're giving that same monopoly to one man. Oh, Dangote refinery. We're waiting for Dangote refinery. Once Dangote refinery come upstream, it's going to address a lot of problems. But you forgot that the same way fuel lands in Lagos is the same way that Dangote will refine in Lagos and will need to, also transport the same product around the federation. You also forget that Dangote is a businessman. He's not a Father Christmas or a charitable organization that is, he's investing money in the business and intends to make profit from it. So what is government doing, to also refurbish their own refinery? Also land. You remember, it's a notorious statement made by the minister that if by May 2019, our refineries are not working, he will resign. And then people said, well, by May 2019, your tenure would have expired. But the minister is still there. Nobody's even discussing the workability of our refineries again.
Which of the ministers?
The Minister for Petroleum, maybe Atiku.
That's Minister of State.
State for
He's
Petroleum.
the president as the minister.
Okay.
You want the president to resign?
Look, we've seen presidents resign. So let's face fact. The question is that we are not even looking to address the problems of refining our crude.
Yeah, I get it.
And so if you're not looking at that problem and finding a solution to it, the IMF will continue to dictate to you on what to do, what not to do. They'll tell you devalue. That's the best way for you to go. You devalue and it creates more problem because your economy is unique. The IMF economists, they know more of your hotels that dot your city's landscape than the villages, the problems that is happening in your villages. So they don't care about those people. They come here, they sit in Lagos and Abuja and Port Harcourt, and then they write report and tell you, yes, this is from what is happening here. This is the best that would happen to you. Because also you go to them almost every now and then, you know, looking for solution to your problems. The solution to African problem lies in Africa. And until we begin to look inward and create, you know, solution. Now we've gone to China. And I laugh also. Very soon, China will be dictating to you on what to do. So we are not ready to address our problems. We throw money at them and we find a way of how do I put it now? You know,
patching them up.
No, not just patching them up. You carry your problems, you transfer your problems. Okay. We transfer those problems. Postpone the evil days and think that, you know, they will just go away someday.
Well, May 29 is almost upon us. Governors at the state level are setting up transitional committees and inauguration committees. President Muhammadu Buhari, you know, won a second term, and there's news that, you know, he might be doing away with almost all of his ministers. What's your take on what the second term cabinet should look like?
I don't see any difference from what we have now, frankly, because there were so much expectations from the president in 2015, and then he even told us that ministers he described them as noisemakers. You know, so people were expecting that, being somebody who was preaching a paradigm shift, that he was going to look for technocrats and then people who would be hands on the job, who would hit the ground running. Unfortunately, when he announced his cabinet, there were people who you could also, the same cabinet you could drop on the day of inauguration. And you know, so for some of us who are, you know, political watchers, who are keen observers, weren't surprised because you can't give what you don't have, sorry to say. And then also, because our style of politics here is, you know, rentiering, rent-taking. You invest in politics, you are expected to pay back. You know, so it's about making money. And so people who invested in his campaign would also want to make money from his presidency. So it's not about those that want to work. And so now, the question you ask, in other climes, campaigns, campaign fund, you know, people donate to campaign fund. It's made public. And at the end of the election, the first thing the political party do is to declare audits, make public the audited statement of account of the campaign, so you know who contributed to. And then with that, you're sure that, yes, that's how you start transparency first and foremost. But here, when campaign account is made, you know, it's covered in secrecy, so you don't know how the funds were raised. Are we sure that, you know, people who contributed to the account or to the campaign will not also be compensated, you know, in this government? So if it's about compensatory, then I won't be expecting anything different from what we already have now. So a lot of people felt, oh, look, you know, also some people who were in the PDP moved into APC because for PDP also, there was no much money to share. And so this is the government in power. So it's all about, oh, let's support Muhammad Buhari. Not because of Buhari, but because it was food is ready. You know, so this is more sure for them. And so if it is more sure, by now I had expected, that, you know, would see something different. But all we hear is the same rhetorics. Yes, my administration will be different. We will do something differently now. And if for 4 years, the president could not change his cabinet, in spite of our complaint, the service chiefs were retained. So what's the guarantee that now they use, you know, some NGS will come from, you know, from above and do differently? So it's all same of the same.
Liborous, Adisa and I are obviously enjoying this conversation around topical issues. But before we give you the sugar bar treatment from the studio to the newsroom, what's your take on this controversy over the leadership of the 9th National Assembly, with the APC saying it has anointed some persons, and now the controversy over the mode of election of the new leadership in June?
It's quite unfortunate. You know, I see a lot of hypocrisy in our political landscape. You know, if you're out of government, you praise a thing. Oh, this is democracy at work. And then you come into government, you do the exact opposite. I had expected that lobbying, first time I must say, lobbying is allowed in parliamentary practice. You know, I had expected that learning from 2011, when Tambuwal and some members of the National House of Rep went against the party decision, also to 2015, that the party ought to have learned, you know, their lesson from the happenings of the National Assembly. Also coupled with the fact that in 2011, if you remember, they eulogized Tambuwal and eulogized the move by the House of Rep as this is as victory for democracy, as the House of Rep, you know, stamping its independence, and that it was very good for our democracy. But in 2015, the president said anybody that emerged, he would work with. Some people emerged, he refused to work with them because they were not, it was not according to the dictates of the ruling party, but according to the wishes of members of the parliament, which should be ordinarily. And so we're treading the same path again. It is good for us to grow party supremacy, but also party supremacy should be hinged on the collective will and wishes of the members, and not one man sitting there taking decisions and interpreting that decision, that singular decision, as party supremacy. Party supremacy should be, yes, the party would prefer this candidate, work for that candidate, lobby members, and not to begin to issue instructions and orders that if you, and threats. It should be persuasive and not coercion. And so when you say, if you don't vote for this man, we will deal with you, what are you telling your party members, you know? And I like what is happening, really. It will develop our democracy, where the parliament will not be a rubber-stamping parliament, where parliament issues will be debated. You know, even if, you know, there should be a form of agreement, there should be checks and balances. The parliament should be able to, if you have a parliament that whose leadership is a rubber-stamping leadership, it would hardly check the excesses of the executive. And so the same way, if you have a judiciary who's a rubber-stamping judiciary, it will hardly check the excesses of the executive. And we all know, like they say, power corrupts and absolute power corrupt absolutely. And so when you have a docile parliament and a docile judiciary, you have what you would have would be a dictator in government, whether benevolent or otherwise.
Well, thank you very much, Liborous. We've enjoyed this very much, and thank you for always agreeing to come on the morning show to share your insights with us. It's time now for a short break on the morning show. When we return, we'll have Arise News analyst Emmanuel Efeni join us to review top stories in today's newspapers. Stay with us.